Daisy Thomas with us this morning, Marty. Here he is.
Hello, Daisy.
G'day, team. How are you?
I'm wonderful, mate.
Terrific.
Round of upsets days. The top three all lost,
They did.
which tightens up the finals race.
Pretty much all bar two of the teams that were favourites going into this round lost. So the D's and the Saints, I think, were the only ones that everyone had tipped. So if you got more than 2 tips this week in the footy tipping,
You've done well.
You know nothing about AFL,
Okay.
and you should move on.
Okay, I see what you've done there. Is Brodie Grundy playing for Melbourne again this season, or has Max just been so dominant that you can't find a spot for him?
I can find a spot for him with a big butt on the back of it because, unfortunately for Brodie, Max is now playing the number one ruck role and absolutely dominating. But
Killing
also, the forward line now is functioning really well. Van Rooyen down there. Harrison Petty, who's a defender, went forward, kicked 6 goals yesterday. Jake Melksham's kicking goals. So, as a friend of Brodie's and someone who knows him, I was sort of hopeful that, well, not that Max had a stinker, but maybe there was a spot in the forward line. But that door seems to be closing quickly too.
What's going to happen for Brodie?
A lot of talk about him asking for another trade, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Damien Barrett was reporting, and Jay-Z Clark, Triple M's own, were reporting pretty heavily that he's going to move on next year as well.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Where does he go?
Port Adelaide. Geelong were into him this time last year. So there's options, which is a good thing, because he was sold on the dream that he was going to come and be a ruckman, not a ruckman who then has to go to the VFL and learn forward craft.
Yeah, that's a very different proposition,
It's
isn't
a
it?
pickle, yeah.
Would he have played forward much over his career?
No, he would have drifted forward as a ruckman, but in terms of actually starting as forward with the defender on you, not so much.
No, that's a totally different...
And it's another skill set that you have to learn. When to lead, how to lead, body positioning, all these sorts of things.
Yeah, no, that's a full rebuild for a bloke that's played up to now ruck.
And again, he's got so much to add. He's missed a lot of footy with injury. He started to come good last year, and again, this year looked pretty good at parts, but unfortunately for that lineup of Melbourne where they sort of thought he would fit in, it hasn't been the case.
And he's an old-fashioned spunk as well, Dave.
He's just
I mean,
a
that's
rooster.
getting
very, very smart as well.
That's
like
getting
myself.
lost in the mix.
Yes.
He'd be the number one ruck at like 14, 15 clubs.
Correct.
It just happens to be the one where the best ruckman in the comp is playing.
Absolutely.
Controversy surrounds the events at Adelaide Oval on Saturday night. Alir was allowed to return to the field after what looked like a pretty bad head clash. He underwent an injury assessment, but not a SCAT-5 concussion test.
So that's what we call the HIA.
HIA.
Which doesn't really work for that acronym of SCAT concussion test.
No, it's totally different. There's different letters and it's very confusing.
But it is. So now the AFL doctors got involved and they are pretty much asking for a please explain from Port because it looked bad. It looked really bad, the contact. Both he and the other player, Lockie Jones it was, collided. They both went down in that sickening fashion where you get a bit wonky and then you're not sure where you are. Lockie Jones did the HIA test and he passed apparently, but there was then subsequently subbed out with a migraine.
Right.
And Alir just did sort of a verbal test, are you okay on the bench?
Yeah, I'm fine, mate. Never better.
Yeah, which... Yeah.
Have you ever heard a footballer say, no, I'm not fine, I don't want to continue?
I haven't. But in the terms of, I sit in a weird spot on this, you put the faith in the doctors. However, did the doctor do the right thing by not ticking every box by making him do a concussion test?
I thought it was compulsory. I thought it was an absolute, if you see a player go through something like that, it's just, you have to do it.
Yeah, I think that's where the issue has become. If he had gone down, taken 20 minutes, and then come back up, and they said, no, he's passed it, that's fine, I think we'd all be going, okay, it's a bit weird, but sure, you've done your due diligence.
It's hard to believe you could pass it.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, in the modern world that is, what's concussion doing to everyone who's ever played a contact sport, you can't have blokes like that just wandering around.
Well, and it wasn't, I remember my first couple of years of it, it was almost encouraged when you did it, and you do the test with a mouse, and it's almost a card game, a game of memory in that.
Yeah.
It's sort of almost deliberately be distracted. So if you were then concussed, you would pass it, but not the smartest thing to do now, of course.
How was your concussion history?
I got a few. Again, nothing major. Only got stretched off once. But apart, who knows? It's all the little hits. It's the accumulation of getting hit every, a tackle, a bump. They all sort of rock your brain. So I think that's what we're starting to figure out now. And looks like this, the AFL do not like.
Does it worry you?
Not overly.
Because you're not feeling any sort of symptoms around it at all. You're not having a headache that you can't get rid of, all of that sort
and
of
again,
stuff.
but it's sort of, I know some people present now, there's sort of fear of later down the track. You get to 50, 60, and if you start forgetting stuff.
Yeah.
And what's happening, I saw a great story last night on Wally Lewis.
Yes.
Who's stepping away from his job as a sports broadcaster because he literally can't remember. He has a book and a journal where
Right.
he writes down his talking points and ticks them off if he's done it so he doesn't go back and refer to that, which is sad
Wow.
and quite scary.
I didn't realise the King was quite that bad.
Yeah.
Gold Coast captain Touk Miller.
We
has
can
been-
liven this up if you want. Sorry, that was a bit deep and dark.
No, I.
No, good.
This
please.
is fun. This
Light
one's
and
good.
This is good.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I should have waited for the nut story.
No, this is good. He's been cleared for his tackle on Dane Zorko. He was accused of grabbing Zorko's testicles.
Yeah, so nuts
At a
is,
nightclub after the game is the real issue
I
here.
think the umpire in a direct quote from Dane Zorko on the night was, he grabbed my nuts.
Right.
So,
Ever been squirrel gripped,
Yeah.
Daisy?
not without paying. But this was a genuine tackle, and somehow I just found that was the handle he was hanging on to.
What's it cost to be squirrel?
Right.
And where do you go? Where do you go? Give me some details.
Daisy Thomas with us. this morning, Marty.
Daisy, both your old clubs went head to head on Friday night in an absolute belter. Carlton took the
Chocolates?
took the small chocolates.
They got a win.
They got a win, 93 to 76.
What word were you looking for there?
I wasn't looking for a word. I was thinking about Bronte Campbell.
That's
Oh, that's Kate Campbell. My apologies.
Which is a radio forum that haven't been in the break with us. Now
Yeah.
doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No sense at all. 93 to 76. Collingwood sort of finally lost one.
Yeah, they did. It's for the Blues. It's what, 6 in a row now,
Yep.
and they're starting to come. It's exciting for them. The Pies, that's just a do-over for them, a little sharpener before they get into the finals. A month to go. But for the Blues, they're starting to believe again. Inside the 8, 6 weeks ago, there was calls for the coach's head.
Yeah.
It was all over. Their season was done. They were toast. It was a waste of a year.
People ringing radio stations going mental. Remember that
Oh, my
bloke?
God.
People
Yeah.
offering to cut up their membership. And
Yeah.
Remember the guy that was down at the club eyeballing the players as they walked
Yeah.
in?
Oh, that's
took-
right.
took
He,
the day off
he
work.
literally took the day off work to go down and eyeball them as they
I
turned
don't
up.
condone
it's what-
violence,
maybe
but
it's
I
what they
may have
needed.
headbutted him.
He probably thinks he's helped turn it around.
Well,
Yeah.
It's him.
Between he and I said I'd never tip them again, and since
Yeah.
then they haven't lost.
Yeah.
So that's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Friday was
Um,
the first time I didn't tip them and we won.
Oh, you a Blues
I'm a
fan?
Blues, yeah.
Oh, I love the way we've now added "we" into that.
Oh,
Okay.
it's always we.
Congratulations to
Thank
you on the
you.
side.
Thank you
Well
so
done,
much.
Loz.
Yeah.
Bulldogs GWS.
Good game, this one. So this was down in Ballarat.
Yeah.
Bulldogs awesome for the first half, but the Giants stuck around. So they've won 7 in a row now, club record.
Gosh.
And all of a sudden, so the Blues and the Giants are now the form teams of the comp, sitting
Yeah.
inside the 8.
You wouldn't want to meet them in finals, either of those sides at the moment.
And with how close the draw is, though, they're still both a chance not to make it.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's the last month of football is going to be talked about for years to come for that reason. That,
Mhm.
it probably will come down to the last round of the season. The Blues play GWS, I'm pretty sure, in that last round. So,
Jeez. Geelong Freo, Daisy.
oh, well, again, talk about the upsets. Freo have been absolutely putrid.
What's going on with Geelong?
Well,
Just they're hit and miss, aren't they?
yeah, I honestly don't know. And a bit like the rest of the results this week, the more you think about how Fremantle has won, the more confused you are as to why they haven't had a good season. The Cats have been up and down, and they've openly said they just need to try and find a spot in the 8, which at the minute they find themselves outside of. But Fremantle come across, they've been absolutely horrible. They've lost 6 of 7 after the bye. So they won a couple before the bye. We thought they'd turned it around.
No.
And they roll down to GMHBA Stadium, one of the hardest grounds to ever play and win at, against the Cats who were playing for a lot, and then
And
they rolled
win.
them.
Was that your biggest upset of the weekend?
Probably Adelaide over Port
Right.
alongside it, but that's arguably that is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Well, Adelaide flogged Port.
Again, a showdown. Adelaide won this game earlier in the season, but Port were humming. They were very good last week against Collingwood. Whether or not that took a little bit out of the sides, this is one thing we probably need to note, because both Collingwood and Port lost. They went to war last Saturday night on a wet night over in Adelaide, so they punched the crap out of each other, no doubt. Adelaide and also Carlton were sitting there going, continue that on, boys.
Please. A bit leg weary, perhaps. Gold Coast win the Q Clash and nobody cares again. The Bombers.
Brisbane would be second. That's a massive blow-up from there.
Take your sticker off your laptop
Yeah,
and
settle
calm
down.
down.
mate. No one cares.
That's a big deal.
No one cares, mate. Sydney beat the Bombers in a
Again.
very tight one.
Again,
2-pointer.
no one cares.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Hawthorn St Kilda, game for the ages. St
was.
Kilda get over the line there
Yeah.
in the Battle of the Dwarves. Melbourne beat Richmond quite comfortably in the end.
In
but that
the
was a
end.
game
Yeah.
for a long time.
That was a very good game of footy, that one. That was yesterday. The Sunday Rub team had you covered with that. Richmond good, but not good enough to win again. And Melbourne just starting to flex. So they were the only side in the top 4 that won this week. And now, as we do, after 1 week of results, we're like, they're back.
Well, they've got a good run home. I remember seeing that come up on the screen. I think they got North, Hawthorn,
us. Blues.
Blues, and maybe the Swans. They'd be thinking they could win 3 of those.
From here, they play North, Carlton, Hawthorn and the Swans. Well done.
Look at you go. I didn't even have that in my notes.
No.
And you just recalled that off the top of your head.
Yeah.
That's how I roll, mate.
Couldn't find a word for win, but you're rolling out a full fixture.
Chocolates was the word.
Chocolates.
Was provided to me.
What about your game, West Coast, North Melbourne? Here we
Well,
go.
I turned it
There you
off.
go.
I
Why you
nearly.
need?
It was a KO game.
Yeah.
For me anyway, so I had it on the laptop on the bed, and I nearly threw the laptop down the street when old mate missed from in front. Running into goal, and I thought, Jesus Christ, give me strength.
And did he?
No.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Yeah.
And I got none of it. And West Coast won 72-67. Mind you, that's flattering us because we were out of it for most of it.
And then in the last quarter, it was all North Melbourne, but just not quite.
Jack Zeebels announced his retirement through the week. What a club champion he is.
Absolutely.
He gets AFL life membership.
And so he should. He has stuck it out at a club that has been
Oh,
not overly great for a very long time, but
he's
he
been
has
wonderful.
copped it all and taken it all, so he deserves all the plaudits he can get.
277 games.
Very good.
Very good. And just a wonderful leader in his day. But you could just see him starting to fall a little bit off the pace. So
And
he's
it
going
happens.
at the right time. Of course, it has to happen for a guy like that who's been a battering ram for most of his career.
Round 21 comes up this week. So on the North Melbourne Footy Club, we think Clarko's back. Is
Yes,
that,
Clarko's
back.
So poor old Brett Ratton couldn't manage to eke a win out of North.
Yeah, none from 9.
None from 9.
Is that how you spell eek?
Eek.
That's
That
all
is actually how you
I
spell
was going to
it.
say, yeah.
And there's also an E in chocolates. Good to see you, Daisy.
See you, team. Have a great week.